I know.
What are you even doing?
I texted my wife and said, just FYI, about to record a podcast. And she was like, do you need us not to be home? I was like, no, that's not what I was
I would like you to leave
saying.
the house.
That,
So
yeah.
listen, before we do anything, I need to ask you a very important question.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would like a commitment from you when you think this podcast is going to be live.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I'm asking, well, there's a couple of things. Number one, some of the stuff we'll be discussing. And number two, the second reason is this is the third time that
Time that
you and
we've
me
recorded.
have recorded a podcast where we're like, we're going to get into it. We're going to do a state of the game for Pulpit. Like the people got to
I
know.
know.
And we've not been able to release them
I
because
know.
everything like laps us and it keeps evolving faster than what we apparently can release. So like
I know, that
what
is
are we
so
targeting
true.
here?
Oh, I mean, so this is the day after Thanksgiving. So
Correct.
it's Friday, November 29th. I mean, this thing needs to come out, next week. We're announcing,
Right, yeah.
We've got some big news that we're
Big
announcing on
announcement.
December
Okay.
2nd, barring
Good.
any, catastrophe.
Whatever. That's
we will
above my
be
pay grade.
announcing on December 2nd. So
Awesome. Okay, so listen,
yeah.
Michael, why did you call it all here today? I have leftovers
Well,
that I should be eating right now.
yeah, exactly. Well, okay, so I mean, we're announcing on Monday. Well, let me start by saying this. We've kind of always built this thing in public, right? For better, for worse.
Yes.
And it's always been something that we did, I think, probably because we enjoyed, like people enjoyed it. I think
I think it was funnier that way.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I think, I love AI and I love product, but I also love brand building, and to me, it's just been fun. It's like, hey, let's just do this, and so, we've sort of always given a bit of a behind the scenes of how things are going and kind of what's happening with the business. And, there's a lot of folks that have, been like really enjoying that. And that's not one of those like, people often ask, when people do that, like I get asked a lot, and really it's like, nah, you don't get asked that a lot. You just,
So many people have asked me to release a course. Mm-hmm. So many people.
Yeah, exactly.
The people have been begging.
And so, but people have seemed to have resonated with just kind of us telling the story in real time of what we're building and how we're building it. So I figured it'd be fun because we are announcing in a couple of days, so on December 2nd, on Monday, that we have, however you want to say it, joined forces with, been acquired by an incredible company in the church tech space called SUBSPLASH. And we are now part of the SUBSPLASH family. And it's kind of been happening, behind the scenes for the last, 2 or 3 months or so.
Yeah, it's been a minute of like discussions going on and stuff.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think, we'll probably have Tim Turner, who's the founder and CEO of SUBSPLASH, on at some point soon to just kind of like talk through some of that and what that process has been like. But yeah, long story short, man, we sold Pulpit AI.
Freaking sellouts. What a mess. So several funny stories from this
officially
that have
closed.
Happened. So we're like closed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like several funny stories from this that have already happened. So first of all, my sweet wife, who does not listen to this podcast, which will become apparent based on this story. So I've been kind of giving her the update. She's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, oh, like it's kind of looking like we're gonna get acquired. And she's like, oh, that's so cool. And like she's kind of stoked about it or whatever. And then I'm like, yeah, it's like pretty serious. Like it's looking like we're like he's going to be signing papers stuff. That's awesome. And she's asking about your baby and like how everything's going. She just keeps in the loop. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then the other day we're driving to dinner and she's like, how's that stuff going with Michael? I'm like, oh yeah, it closed. So like SUBSPLASH is buying all this stuff. And she does the double take. She's like, you didn't tell me it was SUBSPLASH.
Oh.
And I was like, no, I absolutely told you. Like I 100% told you that SUBSPLASH was buying Pulpit. And she's like, well, but like, I know who SUBSPLASH is. And I'm like, yeah, babe, like it's kind of a big deal. Like we're
right.
getting acquired by SUBSPLASH. It's like they're serious. They have money and stuff.
Yeah.
So
they're a real business, actually.
They're an actual business. They don't let people like this do what they do. Right. So yeah, it was like I kind of a laugh because like I think for me, it was just kind of a step back moment of like, it's that you definitely enter like some very different territory when all of a
Mhm.
sudden your wife who runs children's ministry at your church is like, wait, I know who that company is. Like
Yeah.
that's a different league that we're now in,
Uh-huh. Yeah, man. It's been wild. It's been a wild couple of months. It's honestly been a while. Probably the craziest. I sort of like tweeted it, kind of trying to be
Yeah, you
funny,
did.
kind of in jest a little bit, but it has definitely been the craziest few weeks of my life. But honestly, the way that kind of it all happened and the way that it unfolded, honestly, and like, it's interesting because my AirPod's falling out. Hang on
Nice.
one second. You know, um you have a business, but it's also kind of a ministry because it serves the church, right? And
Right.
so there is this like pragmatic nature of business and building a business and running a business. And then there's just like the God, to sound like super charismatic, there's just like the God factor, right? Like, and like what God has done behind the scenes to make this opportunity even happen and the way that it has unfolded and is it's pretty incredible. And so, we have very much kind of through the whole process just been like, Lord, this is your business. What do you want us to do
Mm-mm-mm.
with it? Like what is the future? Sort of he started it, right? He kind of, it's like he put it in my hands and all the people's hands who have been involved in it. But we've really tried to just say, God, where are you leading us, and why, and what does this look like, and what do you want us to do, and how do you want us to handle it? So it's been crazy, but I'm really, really excited. Subsplash is like they're amazing. Like, first of all, they're just amazing humans. And in the process of, back and forth negotiating, buying or selling a company, right? Like things can get hairy, it's a negotiation, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oftentimes in business, there are games that are played and egos and there was absolutely none of that. Like their whole team was just like, so the only term I can really use is like Christ-like. Like it was
That's awesome, dude.
incredible. Even as we got towards the end of the um acquisition, we were like getting ready to close. My daughter ended up in the hospital for an
Mm-hmm.
emergency surgery, and so obviously that like threw everything upside down when you're sort of in like
Yep.
crisis. And so I was literally like sitting with their team trying to get this thing, over the finish line from the hospital. And they're like, hey, before we start, let's just pray for you. They just like
That's
prayed for
awesome.
me and Willa and our
Yeah, yeah.
family. And so yeah, it really never felt like a business deal. It really felt like a divine partnership that was kind of developing. So yeah, man. I'm sure there's yeah. So it was
So
pretty
like
cool.
back up because I think for people that haven't, because I've gotten, and by the way, if you're listening, please don't feel like I've got a ton of privileged information on this deal that you don't have. Half the purpose of this call is for me to actually figure out what's going on. So, but like I
Are
mean,
you
we've been
trying to
talking about
say that
this.
I'm not a communicator of details? That I don't.
No,
That's
you're
that.
a well, you're a
I am.
communicator.
I am not a communicator.
You're a
I,
communicator. That's what I'm trying to say. The thing, like, so no, but we've like, I mean, we've been talking about this for like a couple months, right? And
Mhm.
so we've been talking. You've been like saying, well, there's these like different things that we could do, or here's this idea, or this or that could happen, right? But like, I don't even know if we ever got to actually walk through the whole like mental process for you of like, so, and I know people, we didn't communicate it publicly, like what you were thinking and how you were positioning stuff. So like, why selling as opposed to like, hey man, we've got like a productive, like, company that people are
Mhm.
loving what's going on and they're buying the product and things are growing. Like, why not just keep cooking that? Like, what, from the business perspective, because I think some of the people who listen to this find that interesting, at least. What, like,
Right.
what's your when you're getting approached by them or you approach them or whatever, what's your
Mhm.
thought process on that?
Yeah. So I had never selling was something, especially this early. I mean, look, like I say, it's equal parts, not equal parts, but there's the business side and there's the mission side, right? I knew once we got some early traction that we would be an acquisition target for a lot of companies for a lot of different reasons, right?
Sure.
I just knew, and even if we were just moderately successful, right? Like what we built perfectly slots into, you know, a lot of different companies, great companies that are out there that are, 10, 15, 20 years old serving the church, right? So, but I had never really even entertained the idea of selling like this early, had just not even, and hadn't crossed my mind. And then, we got to this kind of inflection point, I would say, as we were coming out of beta. There was like this crossover where we kind of exited beta. Fox News did that other piece on us, that like was just crazy in terms of just like reach and attention. And so we start to get hit up. I mean, obviously, we come out of beta and our growth, we basically tripled our user base in 3 months, right?
Right.
We more than quadrupled our monthly revenue, right?
Right.
And it became not like a little project anymore. It became like, all right, this is something that has to evolve into a real company, right? And so, when we launched out of beta, we started getting reached out to by investors, and so we were kind of at this crossroads of, okay, this is AI. So, despite what some people think, like you're in business to win and succeed. And so I'm competitive, and it's AI and it's a land grab and it's moving fast. And so the last thing you want to do is be undercapitalized when it's time to grow and when you're growing, right? Because you do want to take a piece of the market and build a real robust customer base. And so we were kind of in this crossroads of like, hey, okay, we need to raise some money. Who do we raise money from? We had some pretty big, like Christian and non-Christian VCs reaching out to us, and that's a whole different animal. But that if I talk about it too much could probably get me into trouble. But you start having to go like, I can't keep doing this by myself. And by myself, I mean like me, the only person full-time doing this. And,
absolutely.
All of a sudden, we're getting 1 or 2 customer service messages a day to 25. And, it's like, it's just, so we started to kind of put together a plan for like, let's go raise some money. And this is how much we want to raise. And let's go find value-aligned investors. And that's always really hard because it's hard to find value-aligned investors. And investors, value aligned meaning like belief and mission, but also like what a successful outcome is. The reality is if you take venture capital money, they're not happy unless you're selling your business for 250, 300, 400, $500 million, right? And the minute you start taking that kind of money, you're saying, I'm committing the next 10 years of my life to spend every waking hour that I am awake, building a massive, massive company. And that's kind of a hard thing for me to wrap my head around in the church space.
Well, there's only one company that's ever done it in the church space, right? I mean, at that scale.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm saying unicorn scale, but like,
yeah,
I'm sure there's not that many companies that have hit half like 0.5 unicorn.
Yeah, there's a few, and there's a couple that are on their way, and
sure,
but those companies didn't take venture money.
All right.
They not to like, I don't want to. None of those companies took like venture capital money as early as we were, and they sort of like they sort of have like charted their own territory and figured it out kind of in a different way. But AI, it's expensive. AI developers are expensive. We just got to the place where, and so SUBSPLASH reached out to just kind of chat and met with their team and met with Tim. And in my first conversation with him, this was probably in August, maybe September, I don't know. And I was talking to dozens of people, investors, advisors. Do I do this? Do I do that? I mean, it was like, when you have a company that's growing as fast as we were growing and are growing, you got to make some decisions quickly because you can't stand in limbo too long. And so I was chatting with Tim one day, the first time we met actually, and I just said, hey, here's the situation I'm in. Tim is a very successful entrepreneur. SUBSPLASH is like 20 years old. They have 300 employees. They serve 20,000 churches.
Right.
He bootstrapped the business until it was very, very large. And they're amazing. And so I just said to him, I was like, hey, this is a situation I'm in. These are the opportunities in front of me. This is, here's one option. Here's the other option. Here's the upside. Here's the downside. And I was just like, dude, you're an entrepreneur. Like, what would you do in my situation? And he literally, like, without hesitating, was just like, man, I would fast and pray and talk to my wife. And he was just like, this is not your business, it's God's business. And I think like that to me was like the first moment of like, oh, I really have alignment with them, and I have alignment with their heart and their mission, their spirit. And so that's kind of, you know, and then I really just started going like, all right, like, again, the mission has always been to serve the church with value aligned people. And the more that I got to know them, and the more that we started talking about what we could do together, and, you know, how AI can be really, really utilized in an amazing way in the church, like, it just became super apparent to me, like, man, if there is anyone to partner with, these are the people to partner with.
That's such a goofy Pentecostal word, alignment, but it also,
I know.
but it also like is, you're not the first person that I've heard, because, you know, I've been talking to people that are kind of in that space, the Christian, I'm trying to do something incredibly hard, lift an incredibly big rock, and I might need, you know, external fuel to do that. And the word that I keep hearing people talk about is like, you have to have aligned capital. And what they mean by that is you can't have somebody coming into what you're doing. And I know that we're maybe, if you're like, maybe we're over dramatizing what we're talking about here, but I think that there's a real sense where it's like, if you and me are very, I think everybody on the team, we're very opinionated about what it is that we're doing. Meaning like, this isn't, this is like a software business, and we would like to like make software and charge people for it and make money, right? That's like a huge part of it, obviously. But we're also very opinionated about like the way that we do that, and the way that we don't do that, and like certain things that we do and don't do, and why we're doing it. And when you have money that comes from the outside that is not opinionated or doesn't understand your opinions or your rationale, like the incentives get goofy like really quickly. And now you're being asked and like held to certain targets or certain standards or certain goals that are just not your goals. And I can't think of a worse thing to see from your perspective as a founder than watch like the thing that you've built that was like a vision that you had, an idea that you had, a thing that you want to do, and watch it get kind of skewed and morphed by someone else coming from outside who just doesn't even understand what any of that is. You know, and like, and I'm trying to think of like a stupid example, but to me, it's like a big part of what we do is like very pastor centric, right? Like that's kind of what we're obsessed about, and we bang on about like, no, the whole point of this is it's like coming alongside pastors to serve them doing what they're already doing. And like, I can just imagine somebody who's like, oh, so it's SaaS, like it's just a SaaS informational tool, like, so why don't you just do this? Like, there's no way that a person who hasn't been in a ministry role or doesn't have a deep understanding of serving people that are in ministry roles, let's just say that, is going to get why you and me are going to do certain things, or why you're going to say something publicly, and it's going to sound weird to them, because you've got this like very opinionated way to do things that is not necessarily
100%.
the most efficient way, or doesn't hit the biggest target addressable market or whatever, but it's the way to do it from your perspective. Like, there's no other way that you're going to want to approach this.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, you know, I think like business is business, and, you know, you never want to make the Christian aspect of it be an excuse to build something that's not excellent, and that's not well thought out, and all that kind of stuff, right? That being said, and there's probably people that disagree with me, like, I do just think when you're building something to serve the church, you have to think about it. You can't just think about it solely the way that you would kind of like a business that serves any other kind of industry.
Oh, absolutely.
I think the minute you start doing that, you become inauthentic. People know it, and
it shows. And
you know, there's mission drift. You know,
it shows.
And so I think like that's part of the whole like faith-driven entrepreneurship, kingdom, and, you know, all that kind of stuff that I think sometimes can get a little bit out of focus. Is like, hey, you can be a Christian entrepreneur building something. I do think it is very different if you're building something that serves the church. At the end of the day, I mean, not to like you know, it's ultimately people's tithes and offerings that are paying for our product in a lot of instances, right?
Oh,
if you think about it. So there is like a stewardship thing, and there is like a hey, I'm gonna like treat this as holy. And I'm honestly not you know me, like, I'm not over spiritualizing it, but I will say there is something spiritual to it, you know? And so when you look at that and you just go like, and then I think the other thing too, it's like, dude, AI is like, this was never about us or our brand. AI is, it needs to infiltrate the church in a good, healthy, smart, excellent way. And this is a very quick way to do that.
Right, because there's
You know,
also a
like
bad, unhealthy, unexcellent way for it to happen.
100%.
And we're both pretty passionate about like not wanting that to happen, right? Like for all the, we make a lot of fun of like all of the critical people out there on this
Right.
podcast and on the Twitter and everything. But like some of them have a pretty good point, which is like there's
Totally.
garbage ways for this to go. Like,
100%.
and we don't want that to happen. And I can see already in certain parts of the industry, to use a gross word for church, like
Yeah.
you can already see that happening.
Mhm.
Where there's people just kind of slapping it onto whatever they're doing, and not in a critical way. And I would like to think that the way that you've approached everything, because I think I can remember from the first time that you explained everything to me, where I was initially like, okay, and then you kind of laid it all out, and you were like, well, this is what I'm looking to do, and I was like, oh, that's different from anybody else's pitch for this that I've heard.
Right. Right.
For how to go about it. And I think that all does stem from like, yeah, what are you starting out with? This is a person that I actually care about, that I want to serve. Are you starting out with like, this is a product that I want to sell into this market, and let's just find a way to like, blow a hole through the wall and get in there.
100%.
And again, I've seen companies do that in the church, and I just don't think it's like, it's kind of gross, first of all, like to watch, because people can see it. And I actually don't think that those companies end up as successful. To my mind. I mean, like,
right.
Because like, as a small pastor, like I want to use stuff that it's clear that it was built by somebody that like understood what the heck I'm doing,
right,
and has a heart for that. And you can kind of tell at the user end level, whether that's true or not.
Exactly. Yeah, man, that's so true. I just think like again, I think we're in a really pivotal moment. And so I think the people that are building this technology for the church, like they need the right spirit, but they need the right war chest behind them. And the reality is like, you look out across the spectrum of companies in the church tech world, there's nobody building and innovating with the excellence that SUBSPLASH is, with the mission that SUBSPLASH is building with. And I've been blown away by them. And I'm like, look, like, let's just, with not to get into like too much about where I think this partnership is going to go and some of the amazing things we're going to be able to do product wise, but like, you got to think they're sitting on probably the largest collection of digital sermon archives in the world. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, I do. Yeah.
Like they reach more. I mean, yeah. So I just think, when you look at someone like that and you're like, dude, I'm like, I can go try and build a little thing on my own, or I can jump in with some really smart people that have been building faithfully for a long time and go, man, let's go win together, And by win, I mean two things: literally build the best AI products for the church. And I won't apologize. No apologies for saying that we want to do that, but also like, let's impact the kingdom of God, and let's do it in a way that's God honoring,
Well, and I think there's also something to be said for doing it in a way where it's, I hesitate to use the word smuggle, but like there's a lot of people that are hesitant about this stuff because I think they see it as like this other alternative thing, where I really think that I'm a pretty big believer in the people that are seeing the 5+, 10+ year horizon on this stuff is like, this will just be part of the tools that you already use. You're not going to go to AI to get a thing. It will just be under the hood of whatever 100%. It is that you're doing, assisting you with the tasks that you were already doing. And so to be able to partner with somebody like SUBSPLASH, where it's like, now we're just helping people who are already familiar with this set of tools, already familiar with using their stuff to do what I need done with the church. And all of a sudden you see this button that it's like, well, hey, what if you also tried this? That to me is like a very good way to slowly help people see what the potential is without making it feel like they're, I don't know, man. Churches get made fun of for moving slow, but churches are supposed to move slow.
Right.
So it's I think it's a great way to introduce a lot of people who tend to get very excited about this stuff. Some of our biggest like super excited users stuff are pastors. Actually, they're not from like a 30 and under bracket. They're from like a 40 and above bracket, where it's like they get it and they're kind of coming online. It's just that I think you have to approach it a certain way so that it's not seen as this weird foreign intrusion.
100%. 100%. Man, that's so true. I think like, again, it's just a different, you cannot look at it like, oh, how are we going to enter the dentist market with AI, or how are we going to enter the legal space with AI, right? It's like we're talking about like spiritual things, and there is a pastoral implication to AI in the church and its usage. And so I just think like, like that matters, and
100%.
and I think people need to know that the people that are building these tools are doing it in a thoughtful way, but not having to like continue to remind you how ethical and thoughtful they're doing it, because that's also a red flag.
Yes. But before I talk,
it's like, no, we're just gonna build really good products that really serve the church. Listen to what they need, build them, scale, talk to customers, answer their concerns, answer their questions, and keep building and apply it into the actual work of the local church, not pontification and theoretical ideas, but like, and so to me, I mean, like, looking at SUBSPLASH and their culture and all that kind of stuff, I literally was like, oh, this is what I would be if I look 10 years down the track in what we would want to build Pulpit AI into. This is it.
Right. I think it helps us avoid the valley of what we call the ministry adjacent industrial complex, right? Where it's like, I would hate to see what we're building get relegated into this, like, oh yeah, that's one of those things over there, sort of, that some people like, you have to stay as close to the metal,
exactly,
to borrow the phrase, as possible. You have to be as close to the actual people that are using this, so you know that you're not building something that is just kind of a fun thought experiment.
Exactly.
Or because I think that's very quickly where some of this Christian technology thought stuff gets, is it's so divorced from like where people are actually living.
Exactly.
And you don't want to be there. So like yeah, not to like push you on that, because you said before you probably you're already not thinking that far down the track, but like what do you see happening over the next like year, 2 years, 3 years from here? Kind of what's your road? Give us the roadmap.
The roadmap. Yeah, I mean, so like I won't talk. I can't really talk about kind of the roadmap, because I think again you have a roadmap, but that roadmap needs to be flexible based upon what users want and need. I think first and foremost, the ability to start to offer to some of the Pulpit AI users some of the amazing products that SUBSPLASH offers, and then obviously this puts us in front of the 20,000 churches that SUBSPLASH serves like every single day, and so that is huge. So it's like we're going to go from getting our hands in, getting 700 people using this a month to way more than that, right? Which means better feedback, more iterations. Team, like you name it. So, I think the only thing I can say is like, I mean, it's going to continue to be its own standalone brand, right? Like you're still going to be able to go to pulpitai.com and sign up for an account and not have to sign up for SUBSPLASH if you don't want to, or vice versa. Obviously, part of the reason we joined SUBSPLASH is because we think they have an amazing product that actually just like furthers the vision that we already have, like, in terms of distribution and content and discipleship and all that kind of stuff, right? It's I think that connection there is really clear, right? But yeah, I think we're going to just get this thing out to market, and we're going to get it in thousands and thousands of pastors and church leaders' hands, and we're going to learn and iterate, But I think, again, the roadmap is going to be whatever is the most helpful for our customers and churches and users. And that's not like, there is no big, like, I mean, obviously we're talking about the amazing things that we can do together, right? And there's obviously like tons of brainstorming happening, but I think at the end of the day, it's like, what's helpful to the customer? That's the other thing too, by the way, about part of this acquisition, is when you're building a company pre-product market fit, like we were, or like we had product market fit, but like, we're a tool, right? And you start to go like, we need to build for what's stickier. We need to build for what's more than XYZ, or we need to this, or we need to that. This is just like, no, we need to just like, now with this partnership, it's like, no, we can just 10x the amount of people that are using it, which means we're going to get 10x more the amount of feedback, which means we're going to understand 10x better what users actually want, which means we're going to be able to build that product and continue building and innovating so that it becomes like an indispensable tool for churches.
And we can be the best version of what we were trying to build, not
That's exactly right.
Tack on a lot of, because I think you were already talking about how we were getting this pressure, or we were feeling internally maybe pressure of like, well, but what about this feature over here that CapCut does? And it's like, yeah, dude, but like this isn't that, you know what I mean? Or all these other things, which not that those wouldn't be helpful. I mean, they really would, but we're just like, yeah, but like, let's first things first, let's make what we're doing. Let's, rather than turning into this bloated, like kind of Swiss Army knife thing that doesn't actually do any of that very well, let's just get really good at what we're trying to do.
That's exactly right.
And then we can, as we see features that need to be added or that are really going to be beneficial, that are coming along with like that, then you can add those in. But I think you do see a lot of, Dropbox.
Right.
Is the perfect example of this, where when you used to use Dropbox, it was a folder where you put stuff. And like, in order to like, I think the classic story that everybody felt like they did in businesses as they scaled, in order to keep scaling, they felt like they had to keep crowbarring in all this other garbage that made the folder where you put the files not work very well.
Right.
So it's that's what we want to avoid, right? Is like, you don't want, I would hate to think of pastors trying to open this up and be like, well, now you're giving me like garbage CapCut that doesn't do that very well. And also, because of all these resources put towards this, I'm having trouble uploading my files that I want to put through Pulpit. Like that's the worst case scenario, right?
Exactly. It is like, what's the biggest value, the quickest value for the customer, for the church, for the pastor. And this really helps us focus on that. Also, just like, they have an incredible product team who's built incredible products and knows how to like extract a lot of customer feedback and create products that like genuinely delight their users. And so to me, it's like, dude, we literally went from me and you and some contractors to like a whole team supporting this, and a whole team of people who are really, really smart and have gone before us. So I'm just like, dude, this is like a win-win, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think ego, I think in this scenario, had I just been like, nah, we're going to keep going on our own, I think that would have been ego. It would have been my ego. And I don't think that's a smart way to run a business. And I don't think it's a smart way to think about, serving customers, especially in the church, So.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, there's something I would love. I like the idea of it becoming a tool that gets built into everybody else's tool chain. And whether that means, I don't know, this is just spitballing, but like, I can see a lot of people, if we do this really well and SUBSPLASH really likes what we're doing and it gets built very well, I can definitely see people that will just be approaching them being like, how do we get a piece of what you're doing? Not having 17 of these built.
Right.
Into all kind of sort of bespoke and hacked into everybody's stuff, which I think is like again, not really the best case for the ecosystem. Right. Now, you want to have competition and stuff, but if everybody just has a kind of crufty, shoddy AI built into their stuff, like I would love to see some, I don't know, cross-plot, whatever you're going to call it, like just some use of the stuff that somebody's already building.
Right.
That's going to be like best in class and stuff. And would that be super interesting to see that plugged into people's like Bible study tools or whatever? Like, yeah, that would be sick. And I think this gets us way closer to that than if we had just kind of said, no, we're going to fight the ship and it's just going to be our little thing. Like, I just don't see that long-term hitting the scale where we'd be able to think about stuff like that.
Totally.
But what if we plug this into this over here? Like, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Which I think that's the thing that is exciting to me as a small church pastor, thinking about like, well, what else could you do?
That's right.
Is kind of the part that I really start going, well, dang, like, this gets us a lot closer to that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be it's going to be a fun ride. And, the cool thing is like, they want us to keep doing what we're doing, and they love our brand and they love our voice and they love all of that. And so that, they only want to pour fuel on that fire. They don't want to like do anything to quench that. So I think it's just we're going to even have even more fun building what we're building and mixing stuff up and having the fun we have. It's going to be a fun year. 2025 is going to be a fun year. I know, it's wild.
What a stinking ride, dude. So like I was on LinkedIn the other day, which is always a mistake. But I was on LinkedIn the other day and I looked down at where I think I was doing something for Pulpit, and I looked over on your page where you had when you had switched from, Founder Vast, and you had like closed that out on LinkedIn, right? Like put an endpoint on that, and you had switched it over to Founder Pulpit, was I think June 23. I could be wrong.
Yeah, something like that.
I
Yeah.
can't remember, like June 23. And so it said like year 6 months maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sitting here, like, I think it was the first time that it hit me. I was sitting there and being like, all of that happened in a year, 6 months,
Yes,
dude.
it
That's
did.
like bonkers, man.
I know.
Because I think when you officially kind of say like, yeah, I mean, I think you were moving towards and pivoting before that point a little bit, but it wasn't that much before.
No, no, it was a hard pivot. It was a hard
right. We
pivot.
just said, hey, like,
Yeah.
Because I remember when you called me, it was like, okay, podcasting, we've tried this. We're trying something else. I was like, oh, interesting. Like something media adjacent, like AI. I'm kind of like, I think I remember there's being like a like quiet space on the line.
I know.
And I was like, okay, why don't you like explain that to me? But
then
yeah,
I went
man,
into
it's
sales mode on you. Yeah.
Some good instincts, man.
Yeah, it's been a wild year and a half, and I think that I just think it's amazing how God orchestrated this whole thing. And I tend to try to under spiritualize. My sort of like ultra aggressive Pentecostal background has me cautious, but I've sort of learned to maybe I under spiritualize a little bit too much. Maybe I need to do a bit more over spiritualizing, because when I look back at God's hands on this from a year and a half ago to now, it's just undeniable to me that he was breathing on it despite our stupidity and not knowing what we were doing and all that kind of stuff. Like it's pretty cool to see how God can, it's like, that proverb, the heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps, And
without question, dude. Because like I remember you were telling me like that there was like some frustration early on, because you were saying that like when we tried to, you were reaching out to all these people to try and get like initial, like a little chunk of cash just to kind of like get things off the ground. And the answer that you kept getting back from people was like, oh man, I really wish that you had come to us like whatever, 10 months ago or something, because there was just money, like just juice was everywhere. And everybody wanted just like plow. Like, I could have dropped a $2 million check on you then, but that's not happening now. Because we were we felt at the time, we were looking around and being like, maybe we missed it.
Yeah.
Like maybe we've kind of missed this AI, like this huge boost of all these companies. And now maybe we've missed that thing. And now just literally sitting here thinking back, I'm like, well, what would have happened if we took a check for $2 million?
Right.
And then had somebody breathing down our neck the entire time being like, why is this not, 10 times as large? I don't think that's a very comfortable way to build anything.
No.
So like it's kind of crazy now to look back at like, hey, at no point have you had to have those conversations where you're like,
right,
that's the lifestyle that you're having to live, which I think is great. I mean, I think I put something sappy up on the internet the other day about like this has definitely been like a life and death thing for my family, like through this whole last 2 years. So it's ridiculous, dude. Like just like you can't ace that timing on your own.
No.
You know what I mean? That's just the Lord being
so
like,
true.
no, let's keep you from doing any of these things, and we're just gonna hit this. It's been crazy.
Seriously, no grand plan. Literally, like one foot in front of the other, and some weeks huge steps back. And So I'm just stoked. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for us to get to like learn from SUBSPLASH and work with them, and keep doing what we're doing. And it's going to be a blast. I think users are going to like just love what this is going to bring to our ability to build the product and scale the product. So yeah, man, I'm excited. It's going to be good.
That's awesome, dude. All right, man. Well, if this goes up,
it will. Why don't you just? Yeah, we'll just. Yeah, it's gonna go up.
I'm just gonna put it up. I'm gonna put it up.
Exactly.
This will be my job now. It just won't be edited because as we all know, I can't do that. So awesome.
Unedited is the best anyway. That's how. I'm
glad that this happened. And this has just been really exciting for me to just kind of watch the whole thing. So I am incredibly stoked to see what happens next with all this. So.
Thank you, man. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna keep having fun. So I'm excited.
All right, dude. Let's do it,
brother. Peace.
Later.